Which is an overwhelming assortment of operations, and joining me in my theatre team are Dr. No, Bill Bailey. Doctor Who, Rhod Gilbert. Dr. Dolittle, Katherine Ryan. And Doctor, I think I'm a pair of curtains, Alan Davis. Right, let's see how the patient's doing. Rhod goes. Oh, that's bad. We've lost one already. OK, Katherine goes. Oh, that's better. That's much better. Yes.
Getting better.
OK, Bill goes. Wow, that's... And Alan goes.
Vehicle reversing. Vehicle reversing. Vehicle reversing.
They're so loud, some of those trucks.
They are.
So the other day, I was about 50 yards away and it was going, this truck is turning left! It's turning left! And it wasn't.
I know, but... Right, let's start with a special operation. How can you turn a muffin into an offensive weapon? I have muffins for you all. There are. There's some muffins. Help yourselves.
Douse it in petrol.
Yeah.
OK.
I don't know. Chuck it at someone.
Chuck it at somebody. Rhod, what do you reckon? Turning a muffin into some kind of offensive weapon?
Just remove the may contain nuts label from it.
Yeah. We're in World War II.
Drop it out of a plane.
Just a single muffin.
The muffin.
Oh, teach me, Germans.
Drop it out.
Was it poisoned? Was it presented to Hitler? Oh, there you go, Oberstmanführer.
It is the most bizarre thing, Bill. During World War II, flour mix was invented that could either be eaten or used as an explosive. And, yeah, so the mix was invented by the Office of Strategic Services, so that's the CIA's parent organisation.
Wow.
It consisted of 75% explosive powder and 25% ordinary wheat flour, which is the way I like my muffins. And so if the holder was challenged, it could either be eaten or you could blow somebody up. So the early versions made you quite ill.
No shit.
Yeah.
I think that was part of the problem.
Yes, yeah.
But later versions, they made it fully edible. And it didn't matter, actually, whether you had made the flour into a cake. You could stick a fuse into a muffin and it would still blow up. Have you ever done that thing of making an exploding cake for a children's birthday party? It's very naughty, but it's terribly funny.
And potentially fatal.
Yes.
No. You make a totally hollow cake, and then you stick a balloon in the middle, and then you ice the whole thing, and when they cut into it, it goes boom.
Very good idea.
That's a good trick, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea, yeah.
There were all sorts of things disguised in World War II. So the British sabotage outfit, which was the
S.O.E.
Special Operations Executive. Because they were in the North African desert, they invented exploding camel dung. And they also smuggled explosives into occupied Europe inside artificial turnips, lumps of coal, crabs, lobsters and tuna fish. The Germans had it as well. They had bombs that were disguised as a chocolate bar. They had a mess tin full of bangers and mash, which, in fact, was exploding.
Irresistible to the British Tommy. We jolly well shouldn't eat this, Roger.
Yes.
No, you're right, we shouldn't.
Enjoying your breakfast, Tommy. Yes, David.
And bombs were sometimes left in books. And they were triggered by the removal of a picture of a scantily clad woman.
Don't remove the picture, Roger. I can't resist.
Can't resist her.
In 1942, an S.O.E. agent by the name of Monty Woodhouse, he parachuted into Greece to blow up a viaduct called the Gorgopotamus Viaduct. And when he got there, unfortunately, some local children thought his plastic explosive was fudge. And made themselves sick eating it. And the bit that I like about the story is he writes about it, he says, thankfully, there was enough left over to still blow up the bridge.
Sounds like the kind of thing you'd take to a children's party, frankly.
Yes. Here, children, fudge. Help yourselves. Enjoy. Lots of S.O.E. agents were dropped into Europe covered in Vaseline. Anybody know
The door of innuendo has been opened.
All the clothes that the S.O.E. had made for them when they went into Europe, of course, had to be in the European styles. And new clothes were very rare in Germany at the time. So they were artificially aged by the S.O.E. tailors, and the way they did that, they would wear them at home for a week, and then they would smear the suits in a thin film of Vaseline and then sandpaper
Oh, so it's
them.
just the suits they smothered in Vaseline?
Yes.
Yes, not the
So you
actual-
led us down a merry road there, didn't you?
And that, I think you'll find, Rod, is my job.
Are these two different armies flying down together with their different shaped parachutes?
They don't look like parachutes, they look like quavers, do
They
they?
are quavers. That's what the quaver started out as.
As a parachute?
As an exploding crisp.
Oh, that's...
Can I just add as well that one of those has got their landing techniques wrong?
Oh, in what way?
Yeah.
Well, they can't both work.
That's true.
One's gone feet together, one's gone akimbo.
That's right.
I don't think health and safety was paramount back then. I mean, that just looks like a bed
Health
sheet.
and safety was very chronically neglected during the war.
I think that.
There's many things that went on that would be totally unacceptable.
God.
All the street lights were out the whole time.
Yeah.
Dark, you bump into things, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Bump into things.
Stub your toe. It doesn't look much of an invading force, though, does it, really? I mean,
No.
it's not the most,
Well, it's just Roger
terrifying
and Tom,
force,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you got the sausages? Don't matter.
Come on.
OK, muffins away, which is not something I've ever said before.
Might have mine after.
I'm about to carry out an operation. What's the first question I should ask myself?
Is there a balloon in the patient?
Should I have taken all these selfies with the sleeping patient?
Am I sober?
Yes.
Should I at least have a quick look on WikiHow?
So there's a list of questions.
Oh, is it?
There's
An
a
official
of
list?
questions. The first thing you have to ask yourself is, do we have the right patient?
Do we have the right
It's the
patient?
very first question. Make sure you know which bit of the body you are going to be
I
operating
thought location meant,
on.
am I in the hospital?
Yes.
I'm in this shed with the pliers. Is this best practice?
If it said identity and then location, location, location.
What are we doing in that location? In other words, what is the procedure that we're going to do? And did the patient, before they were conked out, say that it was OK to do this? So these are the things...
It's really basic stuff, this.
Yeah.
I thought our surgeons were kind of ahead of this stuff.
OK, so that is the extraordinary thing about it. 2008, the World Health Organization, they composed a set of 19 questions to be asked before and after all surgical operations to reduce hospital errors, and it's called the Safe Surgery Checklist. And it sounds really simple, but the use of this checklist has reduced deaths by 40%. And complications by 1/3.
So is that the... So before all these checks in, well, there's just surgeons just going, right, brilliant, right. Come on. Let's just tuck in. Come on, let's have his leg off. He looks like he could have his leg off. Come on. Next! And then...
Yeah,
not
people
checking-
waking up going, my leg! My leg! And you've left the poisonous arm! What about when you have your leg cut off and then you still feel like you've got an itchy foot, even though it's been
Oh,
cut
that
off?
is it, yes.
Phantom leg itch.
Fancy
Yes.
leg it.
Yeah. What about if you get that with... We've got two legs. And you've got, like, a phantom third leg.
That's what every boy thinks he's got. The strangest thing is when people have heart surgery or something and they've never liked Chinese food before and they wake up and they love Chinese food and they discover that the person whose heart they've been given really liked Chinese food.
Oh, is that true?
So they say.
Who said
So
that?
they say. People who've had heart surgery who didn't like Chinese before. It's a very niche group.
What about the really weird one when the woman had a bang on the head and when she woke up she could speak French?
Yes. And what I think is, why don't they just do that anyway for all of us? Because it was very boring learning French at school.
Yeah.
It's not guaranteed to work, I don't think.
No.
It's unpredictable. That's the problem with it as an educational tool.
Yeah.
Did you speak French in Canada? Did you do
Yeah.
French Canada?
But the way that I learned French is that my parents, I think as a prank, just put me into an all-French school when I was 4 years old. They didn't speak a word of French. My dad's from Ireland,
Right.
so he barely speaks English. My mum's Canadian. They put me in this all-French school, and I vividly remember coming home that day being like, what's going on out there? Thinking the whole world was this other language. And they wouldn't answer you in English. But what my parents didn't really account for is that I had two sisters after me, and we all went to that school. They gifted us a secret language. All our teenagehood, we could make plans right in front of them.
Oh, of course, because they didn't speak it. That's marvellous.
Alors, lorsqu'ils sortent, on va avoir la partie, and we could do anything we wanted right under their nose. I mean, we didn't.
Yeah.
No. Obviously. One surgeon, just to get back to surgery, one surgeon who had no problem identifying the patient whatsoever was a Soviet surgeon called Leonid Rogozov. So he realised he had appendicitis, but he was visiting the Antarctic. So he had no choice but to operate on himself. Oof. So he described the pain as a snowstorm whipping through my soul, wailing like 100 jackals. I think he wrote that long after he was better, because I don't think he'd have come out with that sentence while he...
What's it feel like, Leonid? It feels like a snowstorm whipping
yeah.
through...
So he got two assistants to hold mirror for him, and he gave them instructions what to do if he lost consciousness.
Looking at himself. Not my face, you idiots!
He worked on himself for an hour and 45 minutes, and he was back at work within a fortnight.
He worked on himself for an hour and 45
Well, it's that kind of thought, Rod, that led a man called Boston Corbett to perform self-surgery. Here is Boston Corbett. He is famous in history as the man who killed Abraham Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth. But he believed that he was very tempted by ladies and that he didn't like this, so he castrated himself with a pair of scissors. Oh, good action from the audience there. In order to avoid temptation of prostitutes.
He cut his own testicles off with the scissors to avoid the temptation of... Why don't you just walk down a different street?
Yes.
He was I don't know how to put this nicely, it was a religious craziness. He thought that eunuchs were more likely to get into heaven.
I like him. I wish more men would take this path.
Every house has got scissors.
They say that delivering a child hurts as much as having your leg amputated at the thigh without any pain relief.
Who's been through those two things that can...
That's unlucky. That's a bad day.
That's not good. Possibly the least professional surgeon of all times, a man called Nicholas Marie Alexander Vatemar, and he lived between 1796 and 1864.
Hang on a minute.
OK, so there he is in the middle.
Terrible plastic surgery they've done.
He trained as a surgeon, but he was not allowed to qualify because the whole time he was working on cadavers, he kept getting them to speak and upsetting all the other surgeons.
Put him down! Hold on.
Apparently he's a really good ventriloquist, and he couldn't resist making dead bodies talk.
I have to say, it looks a lot like Andrew Lloyd Webber, I have to say.
Barry Crowd tells a wonderful story about a ventriloquist that he worked with. And the ventriloquist came in with his little trunk of things and took out one of the dummies and he pushed it up on the wall like that. And he said to the others, don't look in my trunk, OK, because I have a lot of secrets. So out he goes out the room. And, of course, everybody has a look, right? It means you can't help themselves. And then they hear him coming, they close the trunk. And as he walks in, the dummy on the wall goes, they've been looking in your trunk. The man who invented the game Operation. Do you remember the game Operation? Yeah,
yes.
I love that game.
Oh,
There is John Spinello. He sold the rights to the game for just $500 in 1964. And in 2014, he had to crowd fund enough money to have an actual operation. I know.
We didn't have that game in Wales.
Did you not? Why?
6 month waiting list.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, it's good to have you here. Now, doctors, what's your diagnosis here?
He's fallen asleep on a stag do.
He was running a circus school.
The world's
Students
worst.
hated him.
It's a party game, is it? Pin the sword on the nutter.
So this is possibly one of the earliest anatomical drawings for medics. He was known as the Wound Man. It's a medieval image, first printed in a book, 1491 in Venice. It's all the various things. So he's been injured, if you look there, with daggers, he's been shot with arrows, he's been lacerated, he's been stung by bees, scorpions, been clubbed in the head, bitten by a dog, scratched by thorns, blasted by cannonballs. He's definitely got plague and bad spots, and he appears to have a toad in his stomach. So it's, as it were, the contents page to the book.
What a shame, though, for a guy who obviously looks after himself and goes to the gym. to go down like that.
Yeah.
He eats paleo.
Yeah.
You know, he's really healthy. Thought he'd have a long life, and then
all of
This
those things
accident.
happen to him.
He's a curious contradiction, though. 'Cause he doesn't look after his appearance enough to remove a sword from his head.
No.
He does buy his underwear in agent provocateur.
Quite snug.
They are on the tight side, aren't they?
Yeah. Ironically, that's the most pain he's in.
Yeah.
Would you just...
It's gone right up my arse, that. If I'd been... The first 3 or 4 of those had gone in, I'd think, right, I'm going to put something more protective on than I thought.
He's come back from a sort of Civil War reenactment, you know? So, how'd it go? Don't ask. You know? Nick the armour, I'm left in my pants, look at this.
He's going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to go, I'm going to try something new, hear me out, don't poo-poo it straight away. It's called acupuncture.
Yeah.
They also had one for women. It isn't just the wound man. They had disease woman. There she is.
Is Marvel running out of superheroes? It's disease woman!
The wound man, Ian Fleming, talked to his publisher and he wanted to call one of his books Wound Man, but his editor said no. Why do you think that might be?
You read it the wrong way.
The wound.
It might be Wound Man, that's exactly right. And, in fact, turned into Dr. No. In the United States, they have an exceptionally complex system for categorising injuries. It's called the ICD-10 system, the International Classification of Diseases. There are 140,000 detailed codes for different complaints, and they are extremely specific. So they include bitten by orca, forced landing of spacecraft injuring occupant, asphyxiation due to being trapped in a car trunk, burn due to water skis on fire.
That's really hard.
How could that ever happen?
That is so unlucky.
But my absolute favourite, hurt at opera.
otherwise known as the Abraham Lincoln.
Yes. The first attempts to categorise disease in this country are the bills of mortality, and there was a man called John Graunt, who was actually a haberdasher, but he was very interested in trying to work out the various things that people died of, so we're talking 16th century, and he put together these bills of mortality, and they're great. If you have a look, these are the different things that people died of. They are just gripping in the guts. 1,288 people died of that, gripping in the guts.
Grapping.
Lethargy's already my favourite.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I can't bother.
That's the way I want to go.
Lethargy.
Too lethargic to live.
I quite like frighted. 23 people
Right,
died
good.
frighted.
Killed by several accidents.
I like just found dead in the streets,
Yeah.
fields, etc.
Dead.
What? How did he die? I don't know. They just found him.
Some of these bills of mortality, they just had cause of death suddenly. That's it. That'll sort you out.
Yeah.
Teeth and worms.
How do you die of teeth and worms? 2,600...
I tell you what, look, Wound Man would have read that and go, yeah, I've had that, I've had that, I've had that.
Brain surgery. New, old?
Oh, no, it's probably...
I don't know.
Old, isn't it?
This is not brain surgery, but it's about a doctor's understanding the brain. There was a guy who got on the railroads, he had an accident, and he got a 4-foot metal rod through his head.
Right.
Phineas, is somebody?
Phineas Gage.
Phineas Gage.
Yeah.
Phineas Gage had an accident, pulled through his head, and they left it in because they didn't want to take it out in case it killed
Yeah.
him.
And he was fine till the train came through.
And then it affected his mood, so they were wondering where it had damaged his frontal cortex. Because, I mean, I don't know why they were so surprised that it affected his moods, to be honest.
Yeah.
His boss was saying he started swearing, his wife left him, I think. All his friends saying he's a real misery now.
Could you imagine his wife left him? He probably couldn't get in the house.
No, so...
Watch what you're doing with your pole. What?
He had to do a 3-point turn on the trains just to turn round.
But we're going back much further than the 19th century, so
Yeah.
Neolithic. It's probably the oldest of the practiced medical arts.
would this be
brain surgery.
trepanning or something like
So
that?
trepanning, yes.
Yes.
They drill a hole in the head because they want to get out the little tiny bits of bone that have gone into the brain when they've been hit with a club or something.
A drill, though? How did he have a drill in the Neolithic times? That's quite
Well, they would have had like a chisel.
What would it have been in Neolithic times? What would the chisel be made out
stone.
of? A stone chisel. And then the hammer was made out of stone?
Yeah.
And the bed was made out of stone, I'm guessing?
There's a lot of stone. There's a lot of stone. Yeah. Have you seen the Flintstones? It's just like that, yeah.
Surely in Neolithic period, they didn't know that your brain was as important as it is? Because wasn't there a time when they thought that your whole personality was in your chest?
But everybody would have known what it was to have a headache. I don't think that's a new thing. I
Can you
think.
imagine if you'd said that to Phineas Gage? Yes, Phineas, we all know what it's like to have a headache.
Yeah.
I think maybe a lot of your personality is somehow in your chest.
Yes.
And if you have a heart transplant and all of a sudden you like Chinese food,
Yeah.
something's going on.
Something's going on, but whether your cognitive function is in your chest, I would dispute. I think
Yes.
Mine is.
I would say.
Mine might be.
Some girls feel that. That's fine.
I like her.
I think we think from here sometimes.
Yes, we think in an emotional manner rather than... Yes, I would
It's a
agree
good
with you.
foot above where we think from.
Wound Man was a medieval superhero whose superpower was having everything wrong with him. What would you do if you found 2,000 skeletons in your closet?
I would cancel my dog's credit card.
Catherine, what do you reckon?
I live in a Catholic church conversion, so it is likely.
Does it feel...
It doesn't feel spooky. My Nana was really upset, but it's been deconsecrated so that you can swear in it and do all sorts.
I expect that happened before, don't you?
She checked.
Oh, really? OK. Is she Catholic?
She is Irish Catholic, so I mean, and dead.
And yet she still came over to check. That's love.
Still too nosy for her own good.
2,000 skeletons.
2,000
You
skeletons.
suddenly discover them. What are you going to do
That
with
is
them?
a game of sardines that went too
Yes,
far.
very
A hidden mass grave.
So a collection of thousands of skeletons was discovered in Rome in 1578, and nobody knew who they were, and the church thought, this is fantastic, because for several decades the Protestants had been stealing their relics, and what they really needed was new ones. So they employed psychics to try and see if there were any martyrs amongst them, and a few of them had an M inscribed nearby, and they thought, that'll do, we'll have them, even though, like, Marcus was a really popular name at the time. And when they found a likely candidate, they gave them a new name and a backstory, and they sent them out to the churches across Europe. They couldn't actually sell them as relics, but what they could do is they could charge them transport, decoration, induction, blessing. They would dress them up, they would cover them in jewels like this and put them on display. The real problem with this was they didn't send them with any instructions. So it's like a flat pack without instructions.
Put a bit of makeup on it.
So loads of the skeletons were just...
Bung together.
Honestly, just all over the shop.
This was like the House of Lords, isn't it?
But there was a huge rush to name your children after the saints. So when Saint Valentine would go on display, boys would be called Valentine, girls were called Valentina. And in the most extreme cases in some villages, up to half the children would have the same name because they're all named after the skeleton. And very, very rich people would try and buy relics of a saint who had the same name as them. It's like a personalised licence plate that you get today. It's the same sort of thing. And hundreds remain to this day. Now, time for a secret operation. What is the point of a tap in the ocean?
Oh. That's not a real picture.
It isn't a real picture, because in Britain you'd have 2 taps for no reason at all.
OK, I don't understand this. So you have a hot tap and you have a cold tap,
Yes.
right? Yes. Well, how's that? So you're trying to wash your hands,
Yes.
and what happens? You put it under the hot tap, you think, oh! And then you have the cold tap, oh! Yeah. Yeah. How is it the British haven't discovered there's a mixer tap? What is it?
Excitement we get.
Is that, did you find that baffling when you arrived?
I still find it baffling.
Yeah,
and
no.
I don't understand radiators. Why you want to heat an entire house with a small, hot metal plate in the corner? It doesn't work.
What would you do instead?
We have forced air in Canada, otherwise you freeze to death.
What do you have a for? What?
Forced air, just the
You know,
same as
what
aircon.
Forced air, aircon.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've never heard the term. I'm 40, late 40s, and I don't... I genuinely didn't know how old I was. I've never... I'm not going to bother sitting here working out, but I'm 50 soon, and I've never heard the term forced air. Well, not in that context.
I love the fact... I love the fact, Rod, that I'm asking you some quite complicated science questions and you don't know how old you are.
I'm about 49.
You're about 40. Have you just worked it out?
Yeah. I'm so used to saying I'm 50 in a few years. I'm so used to saying that for a moment it's
No,
something.
the thing is, though, it is quite good to know how old you are. And the producer has just told me in my ear, Rod, that you're 48.
way to remember how old you are.
Yeah.
Is there like a little, some kind of song I can sing or something? Or...
I've never needed a mnemonic for my age, but I'm sure we can invent one. I'm going to come back to what's the point? What's the point? That's the question. What's the point of a tap in the ocean?
My wife wrote a poem for
God
me.
almighty.
It was really good. Really funny poem about all the things I do, like yelling at the kids and being ill-mannered and, like, hungover and stuff. Very accurate character assassination in rhyme. But it was all about how I was 48, and I read the whole thing. I said, you know, I'm 49 today.
Yeah.
God, you don't think she was thinking of Rhod, do you?
I've written one for you.
Yeah.
I've written one for you.
OK, here we go.
How about, like, what year are we in today? When my born, just take that away. You don't have to be a whiz. That's how old Rhod Gilbert is.
I just followed your poetic guidelines. I'm 48.
At the risk of repetition, what is the point of a tap in the ocean?
Is it so that when sea levels rise, you can turn it off? I don't know.
So it's not actually a water tap.
It's not a tap.
Rather
Oh, tap.
so what else could you tap? What's another kind of tapping that people do when they're trying to listen
know.
in?
There's a shark behind you.
Yeah.
Is it a wire when they put a wire, transatlantic radio communication wire?
It's Cold War. It's called Operation Ivy Bells, and it took place from 1971 to 1981, and it was the USA wiretapping a Russian underseas cable. That thing, they're moving it into position there, is a giant tape recorder, and they just put it onto the wire. So the sailors on a submarine, the USS Halibut, located a Soviet cable. Halibut. They located a Russian cable off the Russian east coast, and they moved a 6-metre-long recording pod around it to track the communications. The thing I really like about it, because we're talking some years ago now, the device had to be updated every month, and so divers had to leave a submarine once a month and change the tapes. But it was hugely successful. It ran for a decade until a National Security Agency employee of the United States sold the information to the KGB.
Spying was a lot more hassle back then when you've got to train a team of divers, get submarines.
Yeah.
Now you just need somebody's maiden name and their first pet's name and you're off.
Yeah.
If you're the Russians, you just have to go and see Donald Trump and ask him.
99% of all international data is transmitted through underseas cables.
Good Lord.
So you know when we talk about the cloud, it's actually underwater.
Cloud is underwater, Sandy.
Is that...
Good
done
Lord.
your head in, hasn't it, Rhod?
Yes.
What am I again?
Happy birthday.
I'm going to write down 48 and make a badge.
There we go.
550,000 miles of cable, so enough to get to the moon and back. And
If you're on the moon and you jumped off,
yes,
would you land on the Earth?
Hold on. What are you doing on the moon anyway?
Well, I don't know, maybe...
have you been left behind by a spacecraft?
Yeah. You've got an Uber and it went
Depends which
horribly
side
wrong.
you
If you jumped off the moon, you would just fall and you'd land on Earth.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think you'd be in a great state. I mean, I think you'd be like Wound Man by the time you got down.
They know about space. This is my problem with the sea.
Right.
They can tell us all kinds of things about planets and space and other galaxies. They've been to the moon, allegedly, but they've not been to the bottom of the sea.
I've been to the bottom of the sea in parts of it.
Have you?
Yes.
What's down there?
Dive.
My feet.
Yes. But I mean, I don't know. I'm with you, Catherine. I think it's an indulgence. All this fiddling around
You like
in
birds,
space.
you don't like fish. What's
I
wrong with
like
you?
birds. I like being on here. It's boring
What
up
is it?
there.
How do birds know to stop?
Stop what?
Flying.
Stop going up.
All right, they go round.
You'd think that you get into space and there'd be loads of dead birds going around.
The air gets thinner and they can't fly around up there, Alan.
But
But then when they fall dead, when they hit the ground, we don't know. They're just found dead in the
Well,
field.
they don't
right?
hit the
Like
ground,
that.
they just fall down to an area where they can fly again.
Yeah.
Oh, so they sort of black out
That's true. No, they go. They fall asleep.
and then come back down and suddenly... Oh.
just out of interest, which particular bird are you being? Just so I can...
I'll tell you what, you were there. You were a bar-tailed godwit. Because a bar-tailed godwit, they fly the longest of any bird. Because what they do a very weird and quite disgusting thing called autophagy,
Right.
where they actually consume their own internal organs. partially, to keep them going on the long flight.
And what do they do when they get there? They've got no liver.
They just sort of... Ping!
Make another one.
They make another one, yeah. They just sort of livers regrow. It's the most extraordinary thing.
Wow, I know a few drinkers who'd love that trick. On the cables, because of the incredible pressure under the sea, it is very difficult to lay them. And what they have is it looks exactly like a plough that places them down onto the seabed. Yeah, look at that.
What were we talking about?
Cables, underwater cables.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're 48!
I'm sorry.
So the cables are different thicknesses depending on the water. So in shallow water, they can be as thick as a soft drink can. But once they are down under the deep water, they are as thin as a garden hose.
Good Lord.
The very first undersea cable that linked France and England, 1851.
Oh, look, it's Wound Man.
And it took 2 minutes to send a single character, so one letter or one number, so one word every 10 minutes. One of the very first messages of the transatlantic cable, which was laid in 1858, they sent a 98-word letter from Queen Victoria to President James Buchanan. It took 16 hours to send it. And basically she just said, hi. By the time we get to World War I, there's a really intricate network of cables connecting Britain, France, Germany and the US. And in fact, Britain's very first hostile action at the outbreak of World War I, so 5 hours after it started, was to cut off Germany's undersea cables. And that meant that Germany could only communicate by wireless, and that's good for Britain because...
They could
listen in. But Britain had really thought ahead. They had a network of cables called the All Red Line, and it was a worldwide network. And they were able to communicate because it only passed through British territory, and so to cut it off you would have had to have 49 separate cutting missions, so they protected themselves and be able to communicate.
This looks like a post-Brexit map to me.
It does, doesn't it?
Now, which body part was used to stop the Netherlands flooding in 1953? Yes,
Somebody put a finger in the dike.
On QI before, the story of the Dutch boy sticking his finger in the dike is a myth. What other body part might you put in a hole to... Anybody?
The penis.
Penis!
I was sucked into that.
I can categorically tell you no dike needs a penis. So... No, sadly, 100 men just put their shoulders against the water barrier. That's all. So it feels... I know, tamed. It feels really tame.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Where did the finger... Oh, OK, that's
It's a short
myth.
story.
What is a short story, sorry?
The little boy put his finger in the dike to stop the place flooding.
Oh.
Apparently,
That's
allegedly.
not true.
It's like you've woken up from being cryogenically frozen.
That is how I feel a lot of the time.
There is a famous story about a single...
Oh, famous. You had a little dig there.
It's a poorly known story, Rod, about a hole springing in one of the dikes in Holland, and a little boy put his finger in the hole until somebody came and rescued him. But it's, in fact, just a short story. About,
What was the kid's name?
The child's name was Thomas. I made that up. I have no idea. And I don't know the name of the dike either, and that's unusual for me. So... story, plugging a hole. It's done in a rather more dramatic manner. So these were the Great North Sea floods, and there was a danger of 3 million people being at risk if this particular dike had burst. And what the mayor of the town did, he requisitioned a grain barge, and he ordered the captain to steer it directly at the dike head first, and it plugged the breach, and it saved thousands of lives. So there is a story where somebody did something heroic, but it was neither done with their finger nor their nether part of any kind.
That must have been difficult, the water rushing.
Yes, and the captain having to decide to do that.
Could make that a film with Tom Hanks.
But almost half the population live below sea level, and a lot of the country's windmills are, in fact, used to pump water uphill to reclaim land. So the Netherlands is actually much bigger than it used to be. Anybody ever been to Schiphol Airport?
Yes.
It's now the site of Netherlands' biggest airport. It was the scene of a sea battle in 1573.
Is that why they're so tall, the Dutch, then?
Because their feet are wet? I don't know what...
Because it's so low, because it's so low.
Low, so they need to be able to see over the wall? Yeah. I don't think that's the reason.
Most people are only 5'8" on average, but we got hills.
Right. So people in flat places tend to be tall.
It's just a theory.
Yeah.
That's right.
So 90% of the flooding in the Netherlands has been done deliberately since 1500, and it's done for defensive reasons, because the Dutch always had very flat-bottomed gunboats, so the depth of only about 30 centimetres the Dutch boats could still get through, but it would stop the enemy from getting through, so they use the water for defensive purposes.
Gardening plan.
Did you know that some British canals have got plugs in them? In 1978, a man called Bill Thorpe was employed to work on the 18th century Chesterfield Canal. There it is, extremely beautiful. And he was dredging the canal to get rid of rubbish, and he accidentally pulled the plug out. And when he got back to work the next day, the canal was gone. Most canals were built with some form of emergency drainage, but he had no idea there was a plug. Now, for the mopping up operation that we call general ignorance, fingers on buzzers, please. To the nearest 5 years, what was the average age in the Home Guard? Yes, Rhod.
60.
60 is a very, very fine answer.
How can that be a buzzer, that?
Catherine, do you know what the Home Guard is? Have you ever seen Dad's Army?
No, well,
So what do you reckon the average age?
well, 67.
No, still
35.
It's 30. It's
30.
I was going to say that! I went up to 35!
Yes.
Well, 30 was my first thought!
Half of the membership was younger than 27 and a third was under 18. So the average age was about 30.
My dad was from Ebbw Vale and my mum was from Abertillery, and they used to have the home guards in each of those towns in the Welsh Valleys used to battle each other, you know. And what they used to have to do was take the flag off the town hall of the opposite town's thing. And he said that all the Ebbw Vale boys were up in the hills trying to make their way through the kind of forests and stuff across to Abertillery, and then they looked down and saw on the road below, and the Abertillery boys were going into Ebbw Vale on the bus.
It was incredibly popular being in the Home Guard. So when they established it, they thought about 150,000 men would volunteer. And in the first 24 hours, 250,000 men signed up. By the end of June 1940, over 1 million. 1942, nearly 2 million.
My grandfather was an ARP warden, and I thought that was quite special when I was a kid. And then I looked into it, and there were 1.2 million ARP wardens.
Yeah, it was.
People just volunteer for everything.
They wanted to help. If you put it in context, the Chinese People's Liberation Army, which is the largest army in the world, has got 2.2 million men, and we had 2 million people in the Home Guard. But they did very important work, anti-aircraft guns, coastal artillery, and, in fact, over the war, 1,206 Home Guard men were killed on duty or died of their wounds. So not quite the comic thing that the Dad's Army shows us.
I see.
What is the tallest mountain in the UK?
Well, I'm going to say Ben Nevis.
Go.
You'll ring the thing. Snowdon. I'm on the list, yeah?
It is called Anton Dawn. It's the highest mountain in the UK.
Oh, it probably rises about this much out of the ground and then goes down 10 miles underneath.
It's underwater.
Oh,
It's underwater, 100 miles off the
That
northwest
doesn't
coast
count.
of Scotland. And it's named after a German, of course. It was discovered by a fishing vessel called Anton Dawn. He was a 19th century biologist. But it's 1,700 metres in height. It beats Ben Nevis by about 350 metres. There is Anton Dawn, the German biologist. But the thing that is interesting, it is home to some of Britain's finest coral reefs.
Look at that.
Isn't that like
Stunning.
a piece of jewellery?
How deep is it there?
Between 200 and 3,000 metres down, you get them.
What?
And the reefs get up to 30 metres tall. They are... A single coral mound like that can be home to 1,300 species of marine life. It's a thing of absolute beauty.
Isn't the coral reef dead now?
No, so it depends on which part of the world you're in. But we are discovering new coral reefs all the time. 2016, scientists have found a coral reef that stretches over 9,500 square kilometres at the mouth of the Amazon. And there are some oil platforms, even in the North Sea, that have coral growing on. Now, how many stars are there in Orion's belt?
3.
3. Yay!
5. There's 5.
No, there's 5.
7. There's 7.
7. It looks like 3. It's one of the most famous things. Do you call it Orion's belt, or do you refer to Orion's belt?
I mean, we have the same solar system. It has lots and lots of different names. So in Latin America, they call it the Three Marys. The Arabic name is the accurate scale beam. I mean, what is it going to be? Hundreds of thousands, but looks like 3.
No, it is in fact 9 is the answer that
One more go, I'd have got it.
It looks like, I know.
I was going to go 9 next. I was going
Like the guy who invented 6-Up and was so close to a successful soft drink. There are three that we think of, the bright ones that you can see. They're called Mintaka, Alnilam, and Alnitak. But if we take Alnitak, it's actually three different stars. There's a blue supergiant and two smaller companions. And each of the three main stars in Orion's belt is at least 20 times the size of the sun and at least 18,000 times brighter.
Blimey.
But it's just far away?
It's so far away.
This is why I hate space.
Why?
Because I don't have the ability to conceptually understand how a mathematician can go, oh, well, because of this and this and my periscope, then, like, far away. I don't understand.
That's where you're going wrong.
Yeah. He's in a submarine.
He's in a submarine.
So it's possible,
Yeah.
if you're up there, you know, apart from being burned alive,
Yeah.
that you can't even see our sun.
That is perfectly possible. Would not be bright enough.
Not bright enough.
No,
so
exactly.
this idea that aliens are looking for it, they can't even see us.
There's
No,
nothing.
no idea.
There's nothing there. It's
Yeah.
just us. There's nothing. There's the sun, then there's Mercury and Venus, then there's hummus, Spandau Ballet, and bread and snacks, and then nothing.
Orion's belt may have 3 notches, but it's actually made up of 9 stars. Now then, one test of a great surgeon is their ability to concentrate while under stress. So, while you are answering the next question, you have got next to you bananas and you have got a needle. So this is how surgeons learn to do surgery. What I would like you to do is half peel the banana, like this, OK? Your needle has been already threaded for you, and I want you to sew the banana back together.
I can't open it.
Can't open it. Monkeys have mastered this.
Darling, put it higher up, because that looks awful.
Can't open it.
Before you start, what's your first question?
Am I
Is this the banana you were looking for?
Yes. Have I got the right banana?
Yes.
Is exactly right. OK. So let's try and sew the banana back together. Now, one of the great tests, because the whole thing about a surgeon is the ability to concentrate, I want you to tell me the name of the food that you are holding if it was made without using any pesticides.
Organic banana.
Organic banana. There we go. Yeah. Off and running.
I might as well go for it.
Is
Plum.
it-
My mind's a mess.
Catherine's doing a wonderful job here.
This is where I shine on a panel show of lots of men.
Oh, look at that! In fact, although it's true that organic food contains fewer pesticides or fertilizers than any other foods, the answer is that none of them contain none. I'm afraid if you're eating organic food and you think, yay, look at me, it has all got a bit of pesticide in it.
I tell you what, I have made quite an effective sort of dolphin there. Look at that.
Let's put our bananas away. That brings us to the end of tonight's operation. The anaesthetic is wearing off, the gloves are in the bin, and the panel and the bananas have been royally stitched up, which brings us to the scores. And with minus 35, yes, indeed, it's Rhod! Equally creditable, minus 27, Bill! Minus 16, Alan! With an amazing whole 4 points, Katherine! And I'm very pleased to present Katherine with this week's Objectionable Object Prize. It is this small selection of gallstones, which I had removed only just last month.
Thank you
there you
so
are.
much.
It only remains me to thank Katherine, Rhod, Bill and Alan, and I leave you with this. When the West German Chancellor Konrad Adenauer succumbed to a heavy cold at the age of 90, he did nothing but complain to his doctor. I'm not a magician, said the doctor. I can't make you young again. I haven't asked you to, said the Chancellor. All I want is to go on getting older. Thank you and good night.